going to go live because we're 25 minutes behind time, and we apologize. So we're going to pivot to alcohol, to our miscellaneous alcoholic beverage law, H470, which has come to us from the House. We had a walkthrough of it on March 24th. It's primarily a technical cleanup bill, although it's got pieces that I know we have lots of witnesses today who have lots of input on it. And I think we are going to begin with, I know John has a time frame, but not immediate, and is at the airport. And Craig Stevens we have on first, if that's still okay with you, John. I think you're okay on time, aren't you? Oh, John, you're coming live. Okay. Okay, Craig, I think if it's possible, we'd love to start with you. And welcome. And there's John. John, we're going to come to you after we hear from Craig, if that's okay. What's your time frame is 1 o'clock, so we need to be done at 12. So is that okay if we go with Craig first? I know you're at the airport.
Can't hear you.
He's trying to talk, I think.
We can't hear you. Oh, we can hear you now. I heard the airport. Okay, Craig, why don't we start with you? And do you know all of us, or should we quickly introduce ourselves?
Oh, I've been through the committee. That's okay, and I'll take on it as my task to try to save a little bit of time. So thank you, though. I appreciate that.
Okay, so I don't think you've testified here with this group, have you?
Correct, I have not.
Okay, great. I'm Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Ann Cummings, Washington.
Wendy Harrison, Wyndham.
Randy Brock, Franklin.
Right. So welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
These are
It's for
our
Alzheimer's
Awareness Day. They came to our committee and passed them out.
Oh,
I'll get you one in a bit.
They're
I've worked.
yeah, well, they're in the
Alzheimer's.
LG's office right now.
There is-
Just remember to pick them up.
Yeah. Okay, Craig.
Where I put it.
Craig, you're the owner. Introduce us to yourself and introduce yourself for the record and take it away.
Thank you. Yes, and thanks for allowing me to participate remotely. I actually tested positive for COVID, so good for me not to be there, but I apologize. My name is Craig Stevens. I live in Burlington, Vermont, and I am the owner and operator of Wild Heart Distillery in Shelburne. And thank you. I know you're very busy. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about H470, specifically what I'd like to focus on.
Craig's testimony, as John's is written in our packet for this morning.
Great.
Thank you. And specifically sections 5 and 6, which pertain to the number of Class 4 licenses that are allowed.
Right.
Great. So, excuse me. So I just want to give a little bit of a story to make sure that I'm capturing the perspective of myself and our peer distilleries, the industry overall, and then a little bit to share my personal story about our distillery, which really further underscores the importance of this provision. And overall, I think this is a really, well accepted issue, and we can get into this. So I don't think there's a lot of controversy over it. But first, Vermont's overall very friendly to distilleries. We're allowed to sample and sell our products in a variety of venues. Class 4 permits are ones that specifically allow this to do through things like tasting rooms and attending farmers markets. And I want to talk about our experience when we do that. So one, we improve our short-term and long-term sustainability. We can make sales, we introduce folks into our products so that we're getting them on board as longer-term customers. But then also we drive customers to purchasing our spirits at the 802 liquor stores. So what we see is everywhere we do a farmer's market, we see an uptick in our products sold at the 802 liquor stores. And you can see why Commissioner Knight is supportive of expanding these licenses, because they're really beneficial for our business as well as the business of the state. in terms of running the 802 liquor store. So not pulling business away from it. It's really very collaborative and very, very beneficial for both. And then why else expand the number? So, even though I make spirits, I drink more beer and wine. And when you take a look at data, the business of small batch distilleries in Vermont is harder because of the following reasons. We rank 7th for beer consumption per capita. So we drink a lot of beer, and we rank 4th for wine consumption per capita. This data actually only goes through right before the pandemic. However, we rank 39th for spirit consumption per capita. So small batch distilleries have to work a lot harder, and we're asking for this expansion of permits. It's just another tool to help address the challenges that we have, just another tool to accommodate for some of the environment that we live in. Now, you might ask, why not sell out of state? That actually is a very important piece of our business plan for anyone. And I want to talk about how the pandemic has made this more difficult by sharing some of my personal experiences with Wild Heart. So most of our experience as a distillery has been during the pandemic, more than not. So as you can imagine, our business plan has not gone according to plan. As a small owner run, we have a finite amount of financial resources that we plan on using to help bridge startup to sustainability in our business plan. But with the disruption of our business plan with the pandemic, it has been slower than expected growth. So, we need to bridge those financial resources, which we simply don't. And so again, we're just looking for another tool in our tool chest, such as more Class 4 permits. So just to give you an idea, remember, this is how we fell through the cracks with a lot of the pandemic assistance as well. As a new business, we're growing. Our business plan expected us to grow to here. We only grew to here. That's just as significant as another business who shrank. And when you look at pandemic assistance, PPP, federal grants, state grants, we received virtually no pandemic assistance whatsoever, even though the impact was the same, because it was the difference between a new business growing or not growing, or an established business shrinking. And what we acknowledged with pandemic assistance was only new businesses shrinking. So we fell through the cracks. And there's many other examples I'm sure that you've heard of for folks. So we're just looking for another tool to help us jumpstart some of the challenges that we've had during the pandemic. So, and then finally, I just want to address the number of Class 4 permits that are proposed in the legislation. It's recommending 20. It was, even when I spoke with Wendy, it was Commissioner Knight, it was, somewhat arbitrary of pulling some numbers. It would be actually better if we had more, just to give you an idea of why when we go through and look at this. Currently, Department of Liquor and Lottery administers the Class 4 permits in the following way. We're allowed, if it was up to 20, we would be allowed 20 permits issued per calendar year, not active. So right now, for example, we're hoping this passes and that we'll be able to use our 20 permits for summer farmers markets. But using those permits for summer farmers markets means that for winter markets that begin in November, December, which is all of the winter markets, will be shut out from that. It would be different if they were active permits. We could relinquish our old and start new, but because it's the way that it is administered, issued, that would still be an issue. But overall, I think that these 20 permits do give us another tool in our toolkit. It's beneficial for the distilleries. It's good for small business, and it also benefits the state in terms of bringing business into our 802 stores. So let me just stop there to see if we can help make up with some of the time and see if folks have questions.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig? These would be 20, what is unclear to me in the language we have in front of us is that it's 20 opportunities per company. So you'd have 20 farmers markets you could go to, or 10 farmers markets and 10 tasting room. It's unclear to me what the 20 applies to. Is it per company?
It's per company. So Wild Heart Distillery would have 20 permits. And just to give you an idea, because we do have a diversity of senators here and regions, one of the things that we find challenging is that we end up ignoring a lot of the southern part of the state. So we have, from a business perspective, we're really trying to get into Say
You
again?
won't be the first. won't be the
Well, we want to
Cindy and
do
I
better. We want to do better, agreed. And so one of the things that we're driven to is, most of the population is around Chittenden County. So our permits get used up in that area first. So for example, this year, we're actually looking to expand into the southern part of the state and to be able to go more into the northeastern part of the state because there's a great opportunity for us. Those areas do get ignored, but when we have to prioritize, when we have a very limited amount, it really does not do justice to both our products as well as to our communities. So that's another reason that, we really want to be able to look at expanding it, is really having a more comprehensive approach with the entire state versus just where we can do it with the largest population based on the limited number of permits we currently have.
So increasing to 20 is an improvement. What would your ideal be?
I think that if we did 30, you know very well that we've got staffing and workforce issues. We are able to staff right now 20 markets and or our tasting room in Shelburne, but that will eliminate our ability, as I mentioned, to do any winter markets because the way that the permits are issued. 30 is the ideal. We've had other folks say, why is there a limit at all? Probably no limit would be fine as well. The reality is we'll never be able to staff an unlimited amount. But I would say if we were to move it up to 30, that would cover our ability to do 20 summer markets and then 10 winter markets so that we can continue keeping those relationships with those communities, off summer season.
Great. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you.
John, may we shift to you in whatever airport you're in?
I'm in Burlington. Can you hear me now?
We can. Good to see you. Whoops, now we can't hear you. Now we can't hear you. You were fine before. Nope, can't hear you. Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have to go off video and just kind of talk through my cell phone here, just because of where I'm at here in Burlington. So good morning.
Good morning.
So I know that most of you know who I am, but for the record, my name's John McCann, and I co-own with my spouse North Branch Vineyards, and that is Representative Kate McCann. Just wanted to testify today on H470, and I'm looking to have 2 additions made to the bill today. So I'll go into the first one here. And again, I believe Senator Clarkson, you said that you have both my copies that Scott may have sent to you.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
at least one of them.
They're both on.
Oh.
Both requests are on here. And John, did you present both of these requests to the House GovOps Committee?
I did try to send those at the beginning of the legislative session, but I had no response from Representative Byron on this. So that's why I've reached out to Senator Kasia and asked to be on this testimony to have these additions made.
Okay, great. So take it away.
Okay, so the first addition. I'm requesting for a second-class licensee to be able to purchase malt and vinous beverages on a 30-day net term. The law as it stands today only allows a second-class licensee to purchase malt and vinous beverages paid upon delivery. What that means is if I come in with my self-distributing license to a, let's call it Hunger Mountain Co-op, when I deliver that wine, they need to cut me a check at the same time. They can't put it in the mail and send it to me. So the 30-day net term would be an additional option to the paid upon delivery method. I'm a manufacturer, and I do have a separate license to distribute to a first-class and a second-class establishment. Some second-class licensees would like to have us be on a financial paying system called FinTech, which is something that most of the large distributors are on and most of the stores are on. But being a small winery like ourselves, so let me go into first what FinTech does. It's an automatic payment system that channels through the Federal Reserve. And that means that because of the way the liquor laws are written, that as we drop it off, as soon as it goes into their system, that check is automatically cut to North Branch Vineyards. But I've reached out to several of these second-class stores to have our product on their shelves, and they want us to be in this FinTech system, which is actually quite costly for a small winery like myself. To be in FinTech, you have to have a one-time setup fee of $300 and then a $20 per month maintenance fee. And then every time I do an invoice, it's an extra $1. So over the course of that year, it can be quite costly for a small business like myself. What this means is that I'm losing out on some business because those licensees will not pay upon delivery, but would purchase malt or vinous beverages if they had a 30-day net system in place. So that's item one. Do we have any questions on item one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Wendy
So-
Harrison.
So does FinTech, because it's pretty much instantaneous, I guess, count as paid upon delivery?
My understanding is that it does because it is channeled through the Federal Reserve, which is kind of a way to guarantee the funds are being paid to the distributor or AKA manufacturer like myself.
It's not bank to bank. Okay, so that's my question. Thank you.
And John, how long
Yes.
has FinTech been available, been made available to, well, I assume it's available to anybody who will pay.
It's available, it's available to anybody who distributes or purchases alcoholic beverages. I can tell you that I've been in business now for 16 years, and it's been around for the last 16 years that I know of. So I believe that it's been around a long time.
That's
Wow.
an interesting, so is it only for purchasers of alcoholic beverages?
Yes, FinTech is strictly just for purchases of alcoholic beverages.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for John before we move to ask number 2? Okay, ask number 2.
All right. The second addition I'm requesting is to
Well, wait a
allow
minute,
a
before-
fourth-class license to be added to the retail delivery permit. Again, today, only second-class licensees deliver wine to consumers. So, again, someone like Shaw's, who has the means to do food delivery to people, if somebody were to add a bottle of wine to that, because they're a second-class licensee, if they have this retail delivery permit, can deliver the food and that bottle of wine to a consumer's home. Okay, so during the pandemic, Governor Scott signed an executive order to allow businesses like North Branch Vineyards to do the curbside pickup and the retail delivery to local customers. The one thing that the pandemic did was shut down our tasting room and of course, restaurants and other tasting rooms. I'm sure that Craig from Wild Heart couldn't run his tasting room either. But what that did is leave a huge gap in source of income. So having the ability to deliver wine to consumers kept our business alive and filled that income loss. The pandemic showed small businesses how to be resilient, to find means to survive. We use something called Front Porch Forum, which I'm sure everybody's aware of in Vermont. It's a great platform for businesses like me to sell, advertise, make announcements to our community. So during the pandemic, I was able to post on that platform to offer free delivery on purchases of wine that both Representative Kate and myself were able to deliver to those homes. And during that time, it gave us a chance to build more customer relationships. And we also generated the income that was lost during the pandemic, during the shutdown of our tasting room. Just to kind of give you a quick idea of that time frame, we could make almost nearly $5,000 a month putting this on the internet, having people respond to us saying, yes, we would like to purchase 2 bottles, 6 bottles, a case, whatever it may be, and deliver it during that time frame. So $5,000 a month was a significant source of income that we had lost with our tasting room being shut down. So I'm asking
John,
right now, yeah.
When did that end?
So it hasn't ended yet. It's going to, my understanding is that it's being repealed as of July 2023.
Thank you.
So can I ask a couple
Yeah.
questions? So will your tasting room be resumed?
It's already
Yeah.
reopened, hasn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we have our 4th class license now and we have reopened. But
And
again, it's a nice source of income that if people don't want to come to our winery, we can still deliver to them.
I can totally understand why you would want it. Who would be opposed to this?
We'll probably hear from the commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know that
As you were
Commissioner
saying-
Knight and I have had a chance to sit down and communicate about these things. And during our conversation, it didn't feel like she was opposed to it. But of course, I will let her comment on that herself.
Yeah, no, and of course, and she's gonna be here. I was thinking of other retailers. Other categories of retailers.
Well, so right now it's just 2nd class on the retail delivery permit. So what I'm asking is to add the 4th class to it.
And we always we don't have our chart, our Tucker chart, which we need to get soon because we're now needing to appreciate all the differences between all the different licensees. Just remind us, if you would, John, the difference between a 2nd class license and a 4th class license.
Absolutely. A 2nd class license is essentially a store. So again, Hunger Mountain, Shaw's, Price Chopper, even the 802 liquor stores are considered a 2nd class licensee.
Right.
A 4th class
And then-
licensee is someone like myself, who's a manufacturer.
Is a manufacturer, and I thought also restaurant, or is that 1st class?
So a restaurant
That's
is a 1st class. Yes.
Okay, right. Got it. Sadly, we need to be reminded of these things. Okay, great. Thank you. That's.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
if you look at the ones where I actually put in highlighted there on that page, I don't know if you have that in front of you or not.
we don't.
Okay, so anyhow, under the section 226 retail delivery permits, the only 4 words that we would need to put in there is or 4th class licensee. It's pretty simple to make that change on that license. And again, that's another generator of income for the state because it's a $100 permit. So if we would be purchasing another permit from the state.
So are you talking about section 6? Section,
Who wants to add sections?
It's Title 7, Section 226, retail delivery permit.
okay, so it's still not in this.
Right, it's not.
Got-
Correct. 4th class license is not in there. What I'm asking is to have 4th class license.
We do have
Locked
a
into
4th class license section, but it's 226, 224, and you're talking about section 226.
Correct. 226 is called retail delivery permit.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank you. That is Randy, Ann, any questions?
Just one question back to the first issue regarding payment. For 2nd class licensee, can they pay you with a credit card?
They cannot pay you with a credit card. It's a check only.
So it has to be cash only
Cash or check?
or check.
Yeah, cash or check. Or the fintech
In
system.
lieu of 30-day net terms, would it help if they were allowed to pay you with something like a credit card?
Again, this one particular store that I spoke with, it wasn't about whether they could pay with a check or a credit card. It was more or less they wanted to have an opportunity to have it on their shelf, to give it some time to sell a couple of those bottles. Plus, some of the time they didn't have the time to just step aside and write a check at that particular time. So it was more of a convenience for them to be able to have the invoice and to write the check at their convenience within the 30 days.
So how many of your colleagues, and Craig, this is, I guess, a question for you as well, while we're on the FinTech section, how many of your colleagues use FinTech? Craig, do you use FinTech?
No.
No. And John and
So-
Craig, do you have a notion of how many, or do most of your colleagues use FinTech?
I would say that most of our colleagues do not use FinTech.
Okay, great. Well, we're gonna hear from David.
And to go,
Yeah,
I was
Yeah,
going
go.
to say, I know that even Shelburne Vineyards, the largest, doesn't use FinTech.
okay, great.
Does FinTech simply provide the other side with cash immediately, the same as you would if you paid in cash?
Correct.
There's no credit
It's just an,
association with FinTech, is there?
It's like automatic withdrawal you get from Cumberland Farms.
It's usually billed on a 2-week cycle for the,
David,
for the region.
why don't we're waiting to have you come up and so John, thank you for this. I think we're gonna now hear from David. If you two stay on, that would be
Let me
great.
just ask.
Oh, sorry.
That would be
Randy, I didn't
awesome.
realize you- Yeah,
In
all right.
terms of
Thank you
getting
so much.
payments,
when
I'm
John,
sorry.
Randy has,
Yep.
how do you invoice, I assume, the purchaser who is going to buy something from you immediately? Or do they simply just call you up and say, I want such and such, and then pay you immediately when it's delivered? How does that work?
So actually, the retail delivery permit basically forces us to have a invoice generated before putting that wine in our car and transporting it to the second class or first class licensee. So in essence, what I would do is I either email my customer or I visit my customer to see what their store shelves are like. And then I go back to the winery. I put that order together, generate that invoice, and then I have to have that invoice with me during time of transport.
Okay. The FinTech allows then the buyer to simply pay it online in effect. Is that it?
Yes, that is correct.
Could you not use another invoicing system that is less costly? For example, I don't know, QuickBooks invoicing?
Well, I
do
do
the
use
same thing?
QuickBooks invoicing. Yeah, so I do use QuickBooks invoicing, but the QuickBooks invoicing is not backed by the Federal Reserve, where the FinTech is.
And that's important to the buyer?
It's important
What's
to
advantage?
it's important to the state and to the federal because what it does is protect the excise taxes being collected.
Senator, if you,
Okay.
right,
I can shed some further.
great. David,
Okay.
why don't you come and join us?
I'd be like,
John and Craig, we're gonna hear from David next,
Okay,
who I hope.
Just a quick point of clarification. The reason why I said that we don't use it is, and I know you've got a lot of things to untangle. Distilleries do not do any self-distribution. We only deliver directly to the state warehouse. So this is not a
You
relevant.
deliver it to the
issue for
warehouse
us.
and the warehouse, will- right.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's a good reminder. Okay, welcome, David.
good morning.
Introduce yourself for the record and go for the gusto. Help us understand.
Absolutely. My name is David Keck and I own Stella 14 Winery up in Cambridge, Vermont. Have a tasting room in Jeffersonville and we make the wine actually in Cambridge at our residence, our barn, as many people do. Just so we can stay on FinTech walls, maybe I can provide clarification. We used it as a retailer as well. FinTech essentially for the purchaser works as I would get a bill every 2 weeks, and that would just be pulled from my bank account, and they just keep a constant running, essentially a running bond, so that any invoice is essentially paid to the distributor upon receipt of the product. And then it's pulled out of my account as a purchaser every 2 weeks at least, or you can set it up anyway with FinTech. The benefit for those delivering is all they need is a signature when it arrives. The benefit for those receiving is that all they need to do is sign, they don't need to cut a check. The challenges that are associated.
You can just hold on a second. John, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. Sorry, David.
That's fine.
Competing
We're
with
still in
airport noise.
The Zoom era. 100%.
Well, no, it's great. It's just,
Yeah. So one of the benefits from a sales perspective is the ability to show up and not need a check immediately because we are a COD state.
Well, does that be debited from the account within 2 weeks, provide a 2-week credit period for the buyer?
Essentially.
Okay, so
That's one
that
element
makes
of
it
it.
much clearer. Thank you.
And so to speak to it from a Vermont Grape and Wine Council,
Wait. Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
Because I thought the credit was to the seller, but no.
no, the seller,
Who has
and
the?
I can't remember the exact
Okay.
timeframe. Both have an account with
Okay.
FinTech. And so both of
Have
them
to.
are, yeah, so the seller receives the payment, it might be immediately, but for all intents and purposes, the government considers it delivered and paid for, which is
Okay.
in Vermont, the challenge, right? When I deliver, I need a check, I need proof of payment at that moment. FinTech either provides that.
I
This is
use
a-
checks. I
so-
love checks.
So from a sales perspective,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We just.
No, I understand.
Can we go back a step and talk about why this is a regulation? Because I think I have a guess, but I don't know why this is the law. I suspect it's so people don't get in debt owing for alcohol.
And then
Correct.
unable to
But
pay
if-
for it.
Correct. So is
But
that
the
the
commissioner
reason
will be
for
here,
this?
the commissioner will be here momentarily and we can confirm that.
I
So
Okay.
let's hold that thought.
think
Okay.
So-
Commissioner Knight is a better person for that question. I can tell you from the Vermont Grape and Wine Council perspective, because this has been discussed as well, there is definitely concern about a net 30 because to John's point, the benefit is that there are retailers who need that buffer and need to sell the product before they want to pay for it.
Right?
The downside is when you have a bunch of small producers who are doing their own delivery, we end up chasing people down for
Right.
checks forever.
And you don't want to be in that
And
position.
we do not want to be in that position. So I think finding a solution, I mean, I send my invoices and get QuickBooks ACH payment. That's what that, and because they can pay it immediately online, I know that I'm paid and I can deliver the product. That isn't ideal for everyone, but chasing people down for checks is not a solution either. And so, because everybody will get on net 30 and then we're on phone all the
Yeah,
time.
or not paid.
Or not getting paid.
Especially if it doesn't sell.
Or moving from vendor to vendor to purchase over a period of time before they go
There are
bankrupt.
many challenges associated. So I don't love COD. I love FinTech as a buyer. As a salesperson, it is exorbitantly overpriced for somebody like us who makes 400 cases of wine. Sure. So that's a challenge.
Which is why no one seems to use it.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't afford it.
Have you thought about like a group account that you could use? I mean, since somebody would
Yeah,
have thought about
maybe.
that.
I feel like there's gonna be too many legal challenges.
Yeah.
We'd have to probably open a bank account together, which
So-
makes me very nervous.
David, what are your thoughts on this bill before we have the commissioner arrive?
On this bill as presented.
Yeah, what's your feedback on H470?
The Vermont Grape and Wine Council is opposed to it right now until we find a solution to chasing people down from money.
You're opposed to
Oh, to John
what
McCain.
exactly?
30-day terms
Yeah.
for.
Oh, so you're opposed to John's option number
The
one?
30-day terms, yes.
Now, Senator Clarkson, just to reiterate, so in section 222, the second class license, I have two options in that. One, option I under section B says for cash paid at time of delivery, or section 2 on terms that require the licensee to pay the full amount due within a period ending not more than 30 days after the delivery date. So it gives the manufacturer or distributor two options. and they can make that agreement with the consumer that their customer that they're selling it to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
You're still opposed to it.
So the council is opposed to the 30-day net
net
term.
30-day term.
Okay.
If there's an alternative, then we can discuss that.
Okay.
I don't understand the alternative, why it's any different.
No, I think the alternative is just the way it is now. Under this bill, as I understand it, we would just have to give the retailer, say, either we do one or the other, and if they say we only do net 30-day terms, then they're not gonna buy wine from me. And I guess that's my alternative. Or
Right.
fintech.
Right.
And right now they won't buy. Some of them won't buy from me because they don't have the 30-day net term.
Got it. I think we appreciate the three options.
And that would change us from we would not be a COD state anymore if we did the 30-day term.
Well,
Is that
that's
right?
where I think it gets very questionable, is if it's COD for some people and not for others based on individual agreements. I don't know how that's.
Okay,
Right, I think the commissioner will be able
okay,
to chat about that. Okay. Other thoughts on H 470?
No other thoughts from me.
and that's not in the bill yet.
No,
No, this, what
So
John is
you're
talking
just
about, what,
here to talk to
I
us
just was
about
here to
the,
elucidate some of the fintech aspect, but also contribute based on the fact that I'm the liaison from the Vermont Grape and Wine
right,
Council.
which is why you're here, which is great.
Yeah.
We're delighted to have you. The commissioner isn't here yet. Do we have a note? Have they communicated? I haven't got. Yeah, I
she's not
haven't.
on the list. She's on the list for
She's-
tomorrow.
She's coming tomorrow, I guess. Okay, great. Yes, you're right. Thank you. Right, there she is for tomorrow. On Sportsway. Well, thank you.
Well-
Anything further that the three of you would like to add to this?
To this film?
Yeah, or to these,
Or to the conversation.
or to the conversation. John has raised two additional, any thought on John's second suggestion on the
No.
fourth class license?
No thoughts on that. No, I think that sounds, I'm in favor. I think everybody in the Grape and Wine Council would be in favor of being able to deliver, or at least have the license available to us.
For the free delivery.
Yeah. Delivery.
Now, who would that
consumers.
take business away from? From whom would that take business away?
Stores.
As of right
So-
now,
itself.
it shouldn't take business away from anybody. All it does is give more business to
Well, you're-
the manufacturer.
Yeah, to the manufacturer, but the retailer of wine, we visited, anyway,
For the
the
co-op?
retailer of wine, they are not able at the moment to deliver. I mean, they are through
This-
July 23, but they are
Nope.
not able
Nope.
currently.
Second class licensees are able to deliver as long as they obtain a retail delivery permit. So they in essence would have the exact same rights as we do.
Are they doing that, to your knowledge?
I don't know of anybody that's doing it. I mean, I think the idea was generated because of all of these now stores who deliver food, and the retailer just wanted a way to be able to deliver alcohol at the same time. So if you're one of those people who calls or puts in an order at let's say Price Chopper for lettuce, tomato, soup, this, that, and everything else, and you put a bottle of wine in there, they wouldn't be able to deliver that bottle of wine if they didn't have a $100 retail delivery permit. But if they did purchase the retail delivery permit, then they would be able to bring that bottle of wine with the other groceries to the consumer.
So
Okay, thanks.
all retailers at the moment, and we can,
Have-
are able, if they get a second class license, can deliver wine.
I remember doing,
Yes, if they pull the retail delivery permit.
yeah,
Mhm.
I do remember that. It was Stowe, which wasn't mine.
Okay, so anything
And
else?
I would like to just add in there that I do agree with Craig on upping the fourth class licenses to 30 as well.
Okay, thank you. And what does the wine council feel?
I don't think we have a stance on that. I think that's,
Question.
Okay, go for it.
none of us are in a place to have.
Okay. Yes.
is there any regulation about the number of tastings that can be at any one farmer's market? Either as a hard number or a percentage? You can get a pretty good buzz going down to the farmer's market at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I can speak
You
to that a
sure
little
can.
bit if you'd like me to.
We do regulate, you've got to serve wine with your food, not food with your wine, which was the standard liquor board question.
This is a question.
Um,
This is a question for our commissioner.
Yes, that, but I wanted to make sure we got that.
I don't know that we, for any individual, regulate how many booths they can stop at any one.
No, but we
Farmer's
regulate how much you can sell. And
Yes, we
when does it
regulate-
stop being a farmer's market and become an alcohol convention?
I think this is a good question for Wendy tomorrow.
Yeah, and I believe we do regulate the person doing the supplying, so
Yes.
that if somebody is intoxicated, they don't.
Oh, yeah, no, they
Yeah.
can't do it, but farmer's market is a farmer's market.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the farmers markets have turned into mini craft shows because that's what sells. Some farmers
Well,
markets have stringent regulations. Then
John, do you have an answer to this? How do you regulate the
Yes,
number of?
I do, because if, in essence, a farmer's market is someone who produces basically food products. Well, you got to remember that us grape growers, we are growing and we are farmers. Farmers first. We have to plant the grapes. We have to train the grapes. We have to mature those grapes, and then we have to harvest them and then turn them into a value-added product. It's no different than somebody turning a bunch of carrots and celery and tomatoes in tomato soup and selling it at the farmer's market. So we are
Right,
farmers.
We appreciate that. That's not the question.
If I may speak to it a little bit more directly.
Yeah, let's speak. Would you be kind enough to answer Ann's question?
Yes, so it's a great question. The state has regulations on what we can do in terms of samples, the sizes, and we need to be certified that we're going to stay within those limitations. You have a couple of 2 other layers that Wendy may not be aware of. One is town regulations. So for example, we are in the Richmond Farmers Market every week. You're only allowed 2 alcohol vendors at that by town regulations. And then in addition to that, each farmer's market has a set of rules and regulations so that they are controlling the number of vendors so that they're not creating too much competition. So there's in each market, there's a certain amount of slots that are allowed. So let's say for Stowe, there's only 1 slot, and you rotate multiple people through those slots so that there's only 1 vendor there each day. So it's not quite as straightforward in terms of what the state regulates. You've got local and you've got the regulations that the farmers markets set forth. I will say from my experience, we've done in the past 10 farmers markets per year. We coordinate with each other in terms of distillers. You do want to have an eye out for folks that are going to be abusive, that might try to get around that. Our business is not to be serving folks to drink. Our business is to be demonstrating the value of a product and selling it. So we do work closely together. And I will say of all the events we go through, farmers markets have the least amount of abuse from consumers coming. So there's 3 different layers between state, local, and the market, and then the distillers working together. So it's not exactly a straightforward answer, but I think you get it.
All right. That's
Can I
all.
interrupt
Thank
real
you.
quick? I just have to say I have to start getting on the plane, so I'm going to have to disconnect now. So I really appreciate your time and letting me talk today.
Thank you, John. We
Thank you,
appreciate your thoughtful suggestions.
All right, take care now.
Yeah, have a good trip. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further on this? This is great. So thank you all. And David.
I have an addition to the bill 470, which is actually why. I'm
Okay,
here.
so this is why
Oh,
we
my.
were asking, but you didn't.
I'm so sorry. No, I thought you meant more on the fintech conversation, which I have nothing
No,
further to
more on
add.
this
No.
bill. We
So
have
on this bill,
7 more minutes.
I will be brief. I'm hoping to add Senator Westman's S-107 to this bill, which was presented last year and not passed, and this year's been presented again.
It is, and it is in, it is, I have all the alcohol bills
What was the
here.
number?
107?
It's, I think,
From last year.
no,
It's 107 this year.
Okay.
it's
Last
107, and we had, it's right here, and we had it introduced to us on the 24th of March by Tucker.
Yep.
And, right, and it should be in your packet on your place, but,
Okay,
and so it opens, this is the one that opens the Tide House laws.
This is the discussion of Tide House.
Right,
Exactly.
and I am not sure, but yes, thank you, right. So that's what your request is?
So the request is to be able to pour full glasses of wine in our tasting room of our wines. And I have a couple, and to go back to the licenses, I will be brief. We have a 4th class license, which is a manufacturer's license. We're allowed to open a tasting room under the 4th class license, which allows us to pour samples of our beverage, but not a full glass. If you have production on facility, which was passed a while ago, then you're allowed to get a 1st class license and sort of do whatever a 1st class license requires without the auspices of a restaurant or anything else. Food is kind of overlooked. Everything is overlooked if you can get a 1st class license at your production space. If you don't do production in that space, in your tasting room, then you're never, under current legislation, able to get a 1st class license. Now, to John's point, and I completely understand what you were saying, Senator, that many producers, as they begin, and early in Vermont winemaking tradition, juice was brought in. It wasn't always an agricultural product. I think you'll see most of what is happening in the state right now, and as it is growing, it is mostly an agricultural product and people farming. Therefore, we need advocates, and we also need the ability to support our communities and be members of our communities. And this is where we've run up against the wall, that we were able to get 10 special event permits, which allows us to pour full glasses of wine in our backyard, and people could enjoy themselves and bring their kids and dogs and have a good time. But those run out. That's 2 months worth of people enjoying themselves. And then we can do tastings for tourists, but most of the people in the community have tried our wines and they would like to come in and have a glass of wine, support us, support the community, eat some cheese, and be a part of our tasting room. And under current legislation, there's no way for me to actually do that. And most producers in this state produce somewhere that is nowhere near any thoroughfare for tourists. Most of us producing in barns. We're a small agricultural community of producers. And so unless you're Boyden, when we lease their vineyards, or Shelburne, or any number, we only have 2 or 3 that are on major thoroughfares where they see regular traffic. Lincoln Peak was another wonderful example. Most of us produce where we can and where we can afford to produce, and we can't afford, and tourists are not going to come out to a 3rd class road in Jeffersonville.
Well, they might.
They might, but much more likely are they to come to our adorable tasting room on Main Street in Jeffersonville and support our business. And the difference financially for us and for the state on 10 acres, just to give you kind of a quick overview of the agricultural element, 10 acres of grapes, you can produce wholesale about $500,000 in wine. If it's just wholesale. If you increase that to include a tasting room with just tasting pours, that increases to about $600,000. But if we could pour full glasses of wine, our profit on that jumps exponentially, and the growth goes to about $800,000. So from a financial standpoint, for a small business, the ability to pour a full glass of wine that's where every restaurant makes their money, and it's where small producers like us would actually make more money. So,
And with that, you can do that now if you get a 1st class license.
which you can't unless you do production on site, which is the backdoor that a lot of producers at this point have been using, which I think we could put a carboy of fermenting cider in the corner and slide through that loophole, much as everybody else. I would much prefer that the state support us in this. And from a Tide House perspective, it actually doesn't cross Tide House laws, which, for the record, Tide House laws were a result of legislation in England in the 19th century. They were codified here in the 1920s, and they have to do with monopolies in the sale of alcohol.
Right. It's
that tier thing?
It's the whole
Okay, got it.
monopoly of producing, bottling and
Okay.
selling all
in one tier, but really it was about competition and keeping
It
other
was
people
about
out of your
monopoly.
bar. Right, so we're pouring only our product and we're gonna elbow everybody
Okay.
else out, which brew pubs argue for because they're able to produce anywhere. Because you can bring grain and hops from all over the country and produce anywhere. For the most part, there are a few producers that are exceptions to that, but you can create a brewery pretty much anywhere. Where having a winery, we need to be in close proximity to our farmland. Also, under the bill that was introduced by Senator Westman and went over by Tucker, actually, the rationale behind it is that we're pouring our product in our tasting room. We're not getting a first-class license so we can pour Chablis, or so that we can elbow out other producers that even would have a place there. Right now, we can bring in 5 other Vermont producers to support them, but we would be able to pour full glasses of our product, which really takes it out of any sense of tied house conflict.
Right, but, and I think the concern with full glass pours has always been how much food you complement that with, because
Absolutely.
so
And
many full
I-
glass, you can't just do that on an empty stomach.
Which right now, the only distinction between us and Shelburne is that they,
They offer food.
no, well, they do, but they
I've
don't
never
have
been
to.
there without food.
But they don't have to legally. They have a first-class license that is overlooked right now because they're a producer. Same with brew pubs. So if the Food and the Health Administration overlooks the first-class license at a manufacturer's facility.
Whoa.
That's the
a
Department of
big-
Health that needs
Yeah.
to be,
And I am sorry to be that, this has been a handshake deal since the beginning of it, but I think it's time to say, hey,
I think
if
it's
they're
gotta be
allowed, if
equitable.
they're allowed a first-class license in a place with,
Yeah,
you know, chips, but a convenience store can, I mean, there's a convenience store law that allows them to get a first-class license if they have a little hot dog roller.
got
Oh,
it.
yeah, actually, I've been to one of those.
So we,
Now we're getting to my level.
right,
But,
so now we need to just begin to wrap up.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
I've
but I
got
had a question. Oh,
ethics meeting.
can I just, do the insurance companies require you, one, to have food because it would reduce the liability?
We are not at this
No.
point, there is no requirement to have food. I have no problem with that. The challenge is that you need to have a space where if you're doing a full kitchen and a full restaurant setup, then that also changes dramatically the
Oh, sure.
requirements.
Yeah, all right,
Great.
interesting.
Any other questions?
Just
No, I
for
think-
clarification, we're applying for our first class and our third class license. We're being required to have food. So I don't know if this is different for distilleries or not, but as part of our process, we're supposed to be providing food directly or through contract.
Got it. Yes, a good question. Craig, thank you. Thank you all. And we are going to adjourn and we will see everybody